time, President Trump, he is itching to reopen the economy and get people back to work, but the nation's top coronavirus expert isn't so sure that's possible. Tracy Potts is the latest.
May 1st, that's the date President Trump wants to reopen the economy and get people back to work.
We're winning the battle, we're winning the war.
But health experts warn without more aggressive testing,
we're seeing a flattening of the curve. The same thing needs to happen for testing.
The country may not be ready.
The primary issue here is the safety and the welfare of the American people. That has to come first.
This week, President Trump meets with the new task force focused on how the coronavirus has devastated the economy, rattling Wall Street, forcing businesses to close, driving 17 million to file for unemployment. The first stimulus payments began hitting Americans' bank accounts last weekend. The government says more are expected by Wednesday. America's top infectious disease expert says an earlier shutdown may have helped, and any restart will have to be gradual by region.
It is not going to be a light switch that we say, okay, it is now June, July, or whatever, click, the light switch goes back on. I think it could probably start, at least in some ways, maybe next month.
Dr. Fauci predicts life could start looking normal again in November. And it was after Dr. Fauci's comment about an earlier shutdown that the president retweeted a message with the hashtag #FireFauci. Tracy Potts, NBC News.
Thank you, Tracy. South Korea is planning to send up to 600,000 coronavirus test kits to the U.S. tomorrow. According to Reuters, President Trump made the request a few weeks ago. South Korean companies have been shipping test kits to the U.S. However, this would be the first bulk order from the U.S. federal government. A cargo plane for the Federal Emergency Management Agency is set to take off with those supplies tomorrow morning.
Today is the deadline for the state to come up with a plan to protect prison inmates from coronavirus. The state Supreme Court ruled Governor Jay Inslee and the state prison system need to take action. Last Wednesday, nearly 100 inmates at the Monroe Complex launched a rowdy protest, forcing correctional officers to use pepper spray and rubber bullets. The protest was due to 6 inmates after testing positive, 6 of them. Luckily, no one was hurt. Washington now has 10,400 confirmed cases of COVID-19 this morning. 508 people have died. The numbers are going up a few hundred every day with the number of cases. 55% of those who've died were 80 and older, and the highest number of confirmed cases going to that 40 to 59-year age group, that group logging 35% of the total number of cases.
Well, some people have a little bit more padding than others, a few more financial resources to help them through this pandemic. But others don't have that kind of safety net. In fact, one neighborhood struggling through this crisis is near SeaTac Airport. According to IRS tax data, people living in the zip code 98188 have the lowest income reported on tax returns in the Seattle area. There are a good number of working people there who are now out of work. Ninus and Kathy Hopkins are Access bus drivers who stopped working because they are in the age 60 group that is at risk for coronavirus. So they've had to make big cuts in basic things, even necessities like food.
I'm not working, and so, I have to stretch a meal.
Be simple. Things are tight.
You can do a lot with potatoes and noodles and rice.
You sure can. You sure can.
If you can find them now.
Well, the very latest IRS data, which is from 2016, showed the average taxpayer in that zip code 98188 reports $44,000 in yearly income. That amount is about half of the median household income in Seattle during the same time period. So help is on the way for King County residents struggling to pay their rent. United Way and local leaders just announced a $5 million rental assistance program.
We are very concerned about the consequences of this sudden and massive economic dislocation. And that the place where that has most evidenced itself, even before this, in our region, is in housing and housing insecurity. Even as we see hopeful signs in the epidemic itself, the economic costs are clear.
It's estimated the money will help up to 2,000 families stay in their homes. So for more information, you just can text the word rent to 206-448-4545.
This is Tony Black. A national survey shows nearly a third of 13.4 million U.S. renters, or 31%, did not pay their rent between April 1st and April 5th. The National Multifamily Housing Council, which did the report, is not including subsidized or low-income housing in the report, but it's another example of the financial impact the coronavirus is having. For comparison, during the same time frame last year, only 18% of those 13 million units in the report didn't pay their rent by the 5th. Experts say those numbers need context because most people were likely able to pay for April because they were still working or had savings. But with more than 10 million filing for unemployment, experts say the real test will come in May. Here's what they recommend. If you can pay your rent, do so. Trying to pay months of back rent all at once could be very expensive. If you can't pay your rent, take the initiative to contact your landlord and work out payment options if available. And know you're not alone. There's several groups formulating online offering rental assistance or tips for you to get your rent paid. Remember, here in Washington State, Governor Jay Inslee put a moratorium on evictions so you won't be kicked out. But that moratorium is temporary, and so far, Inslee has not extended it. In Seattle, Tony Black, King 5 News.
A Seattle daycare is hoping to take at least one thing off first responders' to-do list starting this week. First responders will receive free meals when they pick up their children from Bright Horizons in Pioneer Square. The daycare partnered with food delivery service Pick Me Up Seattle to provide the meals. The donation will happen today at 1 o'clock. And food and diaper banks, of course, in high demand right now, unprecedented demand. And while they're dedicated to serving those in need, Sarah Dolph shows us that supplies are already being stretched thin with no end in sight.
Rush hour reshaped by coronavirus. In Pittsburgh, bumper-to-bumper traffic for miles, not to get to work, but to get food.
I just got laid off. I'm just a single parent. There's nobody but me.
5,000 carloads served by the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank in recent weeks. Drop-ins at the organization's warehouse up 500%.
In all honesty, and this is not an easy thing as a food banker to say, we know that in this particular crisis that the demand is greater than even our organization can meet.
Scenes playing out coast to coast as millions of American families find themselves unexpectedly unemployed and suddenly food insecure. In New York City, soup kitchen lines doubling. Volunteers in LA can't fill bags fast enough. And in St. Louis, traffic cops brought in to direct cars waiting not just for meals, but also diapers.
Almost every parent, right, who has to come and ask for diapers, you can feel this and see this just like visceral fear and worry.
The St. Louis Diaper Bank usually distributes 200,000 diapers per month. This April, it'll be 500,000.
You know, we maybe have enough to get through the next week, but then we're going to have to start to get creative about how we're going to access those diapers.
The pandemic putting unprecedented pressure on American families and the organizations that serve them. Sarah Dolph, NBC News.
Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal wants to move vulnerable immigrants out of federal detention centers because of the coronavirus pandemic. She's teaming up with New Jersey Senator Cory Booker on legislation being introduced today. More than 60 immigrants have tested positive at detention centers located across 10 states.